Hey, it's Kenji. I am testing the Ooni pizza oven today. So, Ooni, I've had their ovens for a number of years, ever since the very first model. But I am doing this stage show coming up, actually this Friday, July 25th, depending on when you're watching this, July 25th in Seattle, called Tasting Notes. It is a live classical music and cooking multi-sensory stage show. But myself and, as part of the show, myself and Lee Kendall, the owner of Moto Pizza, are going to be cooking pizzas on stage. And so we're not allowed to have fire in there. So we are going to be cooking in these Ooni Volt ovens, which Ooni donated for the event. Anyhow, I want to put it through some test runs beforehand. I cooked a couple pizzas the other day using some homemade dough. Today I just want to test how fast it heats up and is ready to go, just so that we can get the timing for the show just right. So this oven, we turn it on like that. It has a dial that goes up to 850 degrees. So we're gonna preheat it to 850 degrees. And then this other dial, I'll show you what it does at the end of cooking. But right now we're gonna let it preheat to 850 degrees. You know, like all plug-in home electric pizza ovens or appliances, it maxes out at around 1800 watts. You know, that's the most power that a outlet at home in a standard US home can supply, 1800 watts. And so the differences between one plug-in electric pizza oven and another one largely come down to the way that heat is stored, and so the insulation as well as sort of the arrangement of the heating elements, because as far as heat output goes, you're not going to find much difference, because you can only do up to the maximum. So this oven, it looks very heavily insulated. It is very heavily insulated, and so because of that, it is able to heat up quickly. There's very little heat loss to the actual kitchen, so most of the energy that's going in there goes straight to heating. And then what I found I like so far the most about it is the ability to sort of adjust independently the top and the bottom. So if you know, pizza, the first pizza that you make in any given batch for me is always like the learning pizza. You know, the one that you need to make so that you can see where the hot and cool spots of your oven are. You see how your oven's working. And so if you find that your first pizza, the bottom is cooking too fast and the top needs a little bit of a boost, you can increase the heat on the top or the other way around. Anyway, today I'm going to be testing it using some store-bought pizza dough. It's just a ball of pizza dough I bought from Whole Foods, and I split it in half into 300-gram balls. And I've had it sort of shaped and resting underneath this cutting board in a container. It's resting. It's been resting here for a few hours, so it'll be nice and slack when we stretch it out. But anyway, I'm going to time how long it takes to heat up to 850 degrees. So I will be back in 20 minutes. All right, so we are heated up to 850 degrees, and I have once it got to 850, I turned the heat all the way up to the top. So the stone is preheated. Now I'm just going to make sure that the top is blasting down, so I get that nice puff and coloration on the top. I don't know where my bench scraper went, but I'm going to use this big spatula to pull out my dough. So again, just store-bought dough today, just because I want to kind of see how that store-bought dough functions in this setting. A little bit of semolina flour on my board. We're going to push this out. You know, when you're pushing out a pizza dough, you want to kind of build in that rim around the edge, so you get some nice puffing around the edge, a nice cornicione, and then we'll work on flattening out the middle a little. And then after that, I like to knuckle it. So when you're knuckling, you know, like I put my hands up like this, and basically just try and catch just the rim of that dough with my knuckles, and then you let gravity do most of the work, kind of pass it back and forth, and the dough will stretch out. You know, you can also kind of gently tease out the center like that if you want, or you can let you know, centripetal force do the work and do one of those guys, and that actually is an effective way to let momentum, centripetal force, or centrifugal force, I can't remember which is which. One of them is the force that you feel that pushes you against the inside of the car door it's like an artificial force. I think that's the centrifugal force, is the artificial force that you feel when you're in a rotating reference frame, and centripetal force is the actual force of the momentum, the angular momentum. All right, we're gonna do about 12 inches here. Tomatoes. This is just Bianco di Napoli crushed tomatoes, which I think are the best crushed tomatoes on the market, with some salt, nothing else in there. We'll spread it out to the edges. Back of the spoon for this. I got my buffalo mozzarella. This is a Boof brand, which is you can get it at Whole Foods these days, but it's a Colombian brand. The water buffaloes eat in the grassy hills and mountains in the Andes. I've been to the factory outside of Bogota. They have a real tight operation, but this is my my go-to store brand mozzarella. I find it's usually better tasting than even the imported Italian stuff. All right, let's do just a little basil on there. And then this is some sopressata. Some people like to only put on basil after the pizza comes out of the oven, and they'll tell you that the delicate flavors of the basil get destroyed by the oven. But I find, and what you'll find with a real traditional Neapolitan-style pizza, is that the basil typically goes on before, because it ends up sort of perfuming the whole pie, as opposed to having those real intense bites of fresh basil leaves. A little sea salt. A little olive oil. All right, so we'll get this onto our peel. Wooden peel for launching. And then, once the dough has been transferred onto your peel, you can then give it a final little sort of stretch out to give it a little more area. And the weight of the toppings will kind of hold it down at that point. So it's a good way to sort of give your dough a final little shaping. All right, let's get in the oven. Fits nicely. This could fit, like up to I'd say a 13-inch pizza, but that's 12. I opened up all my windows because I know that this is going to smoke a little bit. The very first time I used the oven, I accidentally set off the smoke alarm. But wow, that's a lot of puffing immediately. Woo! Quick cooking. At this temperature, at 850, a pizza should take maybe 90 seconds to 2 minutes to cook. That store-bought dough just bubbles up like a balloon. Oh my goodness. And of course with pizza, if you want it to be crisper, as opposed to sort of the more sort of floppier Neapolitan style, you can lower the temperature. I think my bottom is done the way I want it, so now I'm just going to kind of lift it up a little bit. This is called doming, to get some, extra browning on the top of the pie. All right. Wow. Would you look at that? Beautiful color. Lots of puffing. Let's see what it looks like underneath. Nice crispy spotty bottom. All right, let's cut into this and see what we got, huh? Look at that, nice bubble hole structure. It holds itself when you give it a little fold. And the bottom is nice and spotty brown. Let me taste it. Ooh. I don't know, that's pretty great. Even with store-bought dough. Not bad at all. You know, with pizza, that contrast between that really crispy, thin layer of crust that you get and sort of a poofy, cloud-like interior, you get that with high heat. You know, that's how you get that oven spring and how you get that really moist and tender inside, but crispy outside. If you want to get the an overall more crispy texture, like a thicker layer of crispness, like more like a New York style, you just bake at a lower temperature. That gives it a little bit more time to dry out before it starts to brown or burn. But with a Neapolitan style pizza like this, you want that really high temperature. This is pretty incredible. As far as what you can do indoors. You know, years ago, maybe, I can't remember when, 2007 maybe, 2008, I was doing a lot of work experimenting with cooking Neapolitan pizza indoors, and back then these style of pizza ovens, even outdoor pizza ovens, didn't exist. It was either like a full-fledged wood-fired oven or you had to hack your home oven. And so I have a number of recipes and techniques where you kind of hack your home oven to do it, but this is so much easier. Anyway, all right, that's the Ooni Volt. They did send these to me so that I could use them for my show this Friday. If you're in Seattle and you want to come to the show, please do tasting notes with the Seattle Chamber Music Society. And if you're going to be in La Jolla next month, we have another show coming up in mid-August at the La Jolla Music Festival. So you can search for those on Google and find tickets. So I'll see you this Friday if you're in Seattle. And otherwise, guys, gals, non-binary pals, see you later.